Alright, so I was trying to think of something to do for a video today because I'm getting kind of bored of it just being more like a diary entry or a journal entry type deal. Although I did have a really good skate session last night. This might be a longer video and the heater's on, so you might hear it go off a few times, like right now. But I was like, well, one thing I could possibly actually talk about would be a recent controversy that happened between or with a content creator that I really enjoy watching, have been a fan of for years, and some of the backlash, and maybe try to make a point of about mob mentalities and the way we make arguments about things, especially important and serious topics. So there's a political streamer, a leftist guy that goes by the name of Vaush, who a little over a week ago accidentally leaked his porn folder, which had a whole bunch of drawn porn in it, including stuff with a horse. And also a lot of it was hentai, whatever. Not the stuff that I'm even sure how to pronounce correctly, but having watched Vaush for years and knowing his takes on things and the way he argues for things and whatnot, that seemed what was most shocking with that. Kind of some of the hypocrisy, because you have someone that in many ways has essentially argued that anime is lolly. Being into anime is the same. So to then be caught with images that are even questionable, that's a bit of hypocrisy. It's kind of what's funny about a lot of this is that a lot of the evidence against him has been clipped out of context, when there's plenty of clips of his arguments that would actually work the best against him in these moments. Now, I don't think that those arguments would be good in making a case that he's a pedo or any of this stuff, but I think it would be one for making an argument of, he's too hyperbolic and also is engaging in some of the stuff that he calls problematic. Even if it's not to those extremes, that's still something that's like, all right, dude, like, what's going on with this, I think the career ender is probably the stuff with the horse, though. I mean, that's a little hard to... It's been a running joke within the community for years now, but having actual leaked stuff like that, that's a little bit different, especially for somebody who their name is kind of built on doing debates, and you're gonna have a hard time doing debates with someone when they have a ace up their sleeve that optically they can just call you a horse fucker at any point. So that's probably going to be a problem. I think that whatever his channel was is clearly over, which is a little sad, because it did start as some very edgy debate bro stuff, but if you watched him for a couple of years, you really got to see somebody mature and kind of grow into themselves a little bit and kind of find themselves too. So to see it kind of taken down as if he and the content of his channel were the same as they were in 2019, isn't it? When I think most of the clips are from. That's a little sad. But that's also the thing that I kind of want to talk about in a slight little bit of a defense of Vaush. Whereas I think some of those pictures were problematic, and whereas I think the horse ones were, again, I think career-ending, none of them, I saw them the day that the folder leaked. I had turned the stream on. A friend of mine texted me to go skateboarding, so I went skating with him for like an hour or two. I came back, I went to put the live stream back on, and saw that it had restarted and had a different name, so I wasn't sure what was going on. So I went onto Reddit and, tried figuring out what had happened with the stream. Found out what happened with the stream. Saw a picture of what had happened on the stream. And when I looked at him, I was like, well, that horse stuff is really shocking. Like, I don't want to downplay the horse stuff at all here, right? Like, let's not have that be the horse in the room. But when it came to the other pictures, whereas I did kind of go like, all right, like, this is a little uncomfortable. No more so than most hentai stuff, you know? There was nothing that I looked at and I went, that's a kid, you know? It was stuff that I was like, maybe 17 here, you know? But again, kind of questionable. Now, since then, most of the discourse has just been calling him a pedo and saying that he had a folder full of CP. That's a serious allegation to make against somebody. And when you levy it, not only is it important that it be true, because you're ruining their life, but that you're putting your reputation on something like that, right? If you're running around telling people that this person has this terrible thing, and then it turns out that they don't, you end up looking bad. Your credibility ends up looking bad from that. And you have to do a lot of work to then try to defend that and bring it back. I made a comment on one of the H3 videos to this end. It's kind of like being a cop. You know, if you plant evidence, you might get a couple of convictions out of that. But if somebody finds out that you're planting evidence, then every case that you have worked on starts being called into question. Because it's like, well, if you lied about this, which other ones are you lying about? And if you start looking into more and more and more of these, and you're like, well, a lot of these are, then all of your credibility starts being called into question. I'm a fan of, when it comes to the political streaming side of things on YouTube, I would say Vaush. I watch some Hassan when there's not really anything new from Vaush out. And then kind of last behind that is Ethan Klein and the H3 podcast. I feel like that's the most shallow of them. And that's not to say that they are. I've definitely enjoyed some of his debates against, again, like Pearly Things, and Ollie London, I think, was another one. There were a few. I think he did the guy from the cult. There were a few that I was like very impressed with his debate skills and like the way that he really showed these people to be the clowns that they were. Hassan is all right. A lot of it feels more like preaching to the choir than giving people an actual argument for a lot of these things. Still entertaining. Still like a lot of the videos that he watches and reacts to, so that's fine. Even if I don't always agree with him on things, it's at least nice to get the perspective there. And then Vaush, I tend to agree with the most, but also I feel like you can only have one person that you watch as a live streamer. That's like 3 hours, you know. And I don't even sit there and watch the whole thing. I like to have some background noise, but you only need so much background noise. One dude that does a 3-hour-long stream is the background noise that I need while I'm sitting on the computer and trying to do some like retopology of a model in Blender, or write out recipes or whatever, you know. Like, that's fine. And again, the fact that I agree with a lot of the things that he says in his politics, that makes it enjoyable. Plus, because he does a lot of debate, and I like to debate with people. I like to argue things and my points and whatever. Having somebody that's good at explaining rhetoric and how to construct a good argument and how to deconstruct a bad one is entertaining to me. I enjoy that. It's a pleasure to watch. It's like watching an artist do something. And a lot of his debates are like that. Is watching somebody that's able to take somebody's bad arguments, break them down for the bad elements, still steel man their argument, and from that higher point break it down to show how it's still wrong. And I think that that's the best that you can do in a debate, even if you don't change somebody's mind that way, the person that you're debating. There's a better chance of changing their audience's mind in your favor, if nothing else, not losing any of the ones that agree with you. Having said that, this is where Vaush came from. His channel started in 2019. I think I started watching him in early 2020 during the pandemic. I will admit that the first few times that I saw something from him, it was a video that was recommended, or in my recommended list on YouTube, and it was back when it was a weird, like his face was like a pink mountain. I'm not really sure, but you know, I would click on him, watch like 30 seconds and just kind of click off. There was a very big like basement dweller Redditor neckbeard with a man bun yelling at a mic vibe that I just was not really into. He kind of seemed like Vaush Limbaugh. Am I right? Yeah, there we go. But yeah, like it wasn't my thing. And then I think around the time that he made a video on Shane Dawson, who I didn't know and still don't know who that person is, but it was it ended up being a video about how grooming takes place, especially within the video game or creator culture, when people that don't have many friends all of a sudden are thrust into the limelight with a lot of people that want to spend time with them and giving them attention. And I thought it was a very good video. And again, when I found out he did live streams and this was something that I could put on for background, that was ideal. He was, at the time, making some very hyperbolic arguments that I think now, in hindsight, looking back, are uncomfortable. But I think that given the context of the situation, are actually understandable. For a lot of people that didn't follow online politics up until maybe like a year ago, the alt-right and things that you would see people argue for on channels like 4chan and some parts of Reddit and things like that were pretty far out there. For those that can remember last year, there were two people that were standing by Kanye West's side when he was announcing he was running for president and saying that he liked Hitler on the Alex Jones show. One of them was Nick Fuentes, who I don't know much about, but from what I do understand, his views on some of the topics and things that Vaush is being accused of, he is openly and outright pro for, and does make the argument. So the things that Vaush is being accused of supporting, this person actually does. And when it comes to the next guy, Milo Yiannopoulos, I think is how you pronounce his name correctly, this is the guy that back in like 2016 or 17 not only said could relationships between an adult and a minor be positive, that they were, that he had one, and that it was good for him and he promoted it. These are some of the thought leaders of the group of people that Vaush is debating against. There is a reason why even a leftist that decides that they're going to go into the muck and actually argue with these people would need to have sound, well-constructed arguments against some of these things. And I get why to the average person, it's like, why would you even think of this? Why would you need to think about this so much? It is just gross. Ew. Well, when you're debating somebody who their optic target in it is to make you look irrational and emotional and things like that, and like your positions aren't well thought out of or logical, they're just by your feels or by what other people think, that kind of reaction is what they're looking for. The only way you can really beat something like that is to go, okay, that's your position. Well, if this is your position and these are your arguments for it, here's how this argument is wrong, this argument wrong, this argument is wrong. There you go. One of the more egregious clips that has been passed around by Vaush is the one where he is trying to explain the difference between act utilitarianism and rule. I'm not even gonna get a lot of these words right. And he starts off by saying that a relationship between an adult and a minor is possible to have positive outcomes. Now, I think that anyone that just watches the video will understand that when he says that in the way of like, anything is possible. Like, even if you have to do some stupid mental gymnastics of like in another reality, on another planet, in a different set of circumstances, whatever. If you have to disregard the entire rest of the thing that he says, the entire content, like the body of what is being discussed and the rest of it, and how he is using that setup as an example and reason why it's still wrong, you're just being in bad faith. You're just being dishonest. And when you start doing that and people start going like, okay, I'm going to look beyond the clip and the way you're framing it. I've watched the H3H3 thing, and they said they gave the context of his clip there, but you know, when I watched it, I noticed that they just paused it every 3 seconds and talked over it, and then they cut the clip early. You know what? I'm gonna go find that myself and go watch it. And then you go and you watch that on yourself and you realize, oh, I now see why they poisoned the well so much before playing the clip. I understand why they paused it so frequently once he started making defenses of what he was saying. And I understand why they cut the rest of it off. It's because if you actually play what he said, it's hard to get that impression. Otherwise, you have to go in pretty bad faith to think that he's saying something different than that. A lot of those clips I saw in real time when he was either arguing with his chat or more often than not debating somebody. And I think that a big thing that people don't understand of like, well, how can you think that he meant anything else? It's like, well, when you're watching a debate that's going on for an hour, or a rant that's been going on for an hour between him and his community or him and his chat or whatever, in which he's explicitly talking about the evils of such things, and then throws one thing in like that, it's pretty obviously to be sarcastic or a joke or hyperbolic or something like that, because you're like, well, I've just listened to him make every good and reasonable argument against it for the last hour, and he's even giving this one as a setup to give yet another good and reasonable argument against it. Why would my takeaway be that like, no, that's secretly what he really believes? Or yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. And so I've watched this go from, I guess this is how it's felt, looking at it online from the outside, just through different content creators, Reddit subreddits, and comment sections and things like that. Vaush leaks his folder. Everyone starts saying, or I start hearing, or whatever, starts going around, Vaush is a pedo. And you go, really? Well, was he caught with a kid or something, or meeting with a kid, or trying to meet with a kid, grooming a kid? No. He had a folder full of porn, and it was CP, whole folder full of CP. Okay, really? Like a whole folder full of CP? Like the folder was just full of it? Oh, well, like, you know, half of it wasn't even naked stuff, but the other half of it was like hentai lolly stuff, which is the same as CP. It's like, oh, really? Like, you're sure? Like, half of it, like, you just explicitly was, oh, yeah, it was. All right, let me look into this. Okay, well, a lot of people are saying that this wasn't explicit, and that really the reasoning behind it being known as lolly is because the person that drew it also draws lolly, but draws other stuff as well. So when you look at it, it's pretty easy to mistake it as not being. That's not really the same as having a folder full of CP. Like, that's like having one questionable image of all of your stuff. And also, so this is just leaked stuff, right? It's not like it's some curated, like he wanted people to see it. You'd think the most damning images possible would be in there, and there isn't anything that's explicitly this. This is, you got one image that's kind of close, and you know, if I look at the images, which I did, I don't think you need to be a photographer or an artist in some way to understand framing and composition as to what's important in a picture. But I'm going to tell you, it didn't seem like it was any of the females in the picture. Um, I would say there was a distinct gravitation towards large dicks. You know, I feel like that if you look at any of them, you're kind of like, that seems to be what was really important here, was a very large dick. And it would be great if it was in or around some chick's mouth. But the big dick part was the important part. I'm going to say some of this part. Some of the stuff quieter because I do have roommates. What a weird fucking... just weird shit. That's just weird shit. And I think he did definitely make it worse because I think, like I said, I think the horse stuff is what's damning. I think describing some of it as goblin porn also, that is just dig that hole just a little bit deeper, so now you're the goblin horse fucker. That's amazing. You know, to people that are making, but again, there's an argument for charitability there. You know, when somebody's like, oh yeah, like, are you gonna tell me hentai had some weird goblin stuff in it? It's like, yeah, gee, I don't know, man. Like, I don't watch hentai, but you know, the idea that it would have monsters and other shit like that in there is just unbelievable to me. I don't know how that could be possible. Yeah, I guess, dude. It's not what I'm into, but like, whatever, fucking ever, dude. I'm not, unless it's actually CP. I know that's not the politically correct term anymore, but fucking hang me. Unless that's what it is, unless it's something I'm like, you're hurting kids with this, like, or promoting hurting kids with this, like, or some other torture type thing like that. I'm like, no one's getting hurt by this, and this is just a weird kink you have. Go off. Maybe don't do the weirdest part of all of this, like, which is save it. Who saves porn? I didn't think anyone saved porn since, like, the internet came out. Like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you ever need to look at it again? Like, grow up, be like most of us. Once we've looked at it and we've done our thing, we're like disgusted by whatever we've looked at, and we just never talk of it or think of it again. Weirdo. Anyways, if you don't look at this situation and criticize it with the good faith and charitability that it does kind of demand because of the seriousness of the subject matter, which is not to mean that there aren't jokes to be made. There isn't things to tease or rightfully criticize Vaush for. But if you don't do that in good faith and with charity, you hurt your argument against him. You make fans that look at him or look at your evidence against him go, okay, this just seems like it's filled with hate. If I'm trying to be in good faith and go to Ethan Klein's channel and watch what he has to say about the situation, and it's in bad faith, and I'm in his comment sections arguing with fans of his, and they're literally going, I don't care about context. I don't want context. Context be damned. That makes it look like, okay, then you don't care about the truth. You don't care about what's really going on here. You just want to be part of the mob with the pitchforks and the torches that go after somebody, regardless of if they're bad or not. And the problem is there's a long line of examples of how that goes really, really wrong. And I do think it will even cause problems for Ethan Klein. Like, I don't think he's going to lose subs. I don't think it's going to cost him his, community or anything else like that. But one of the last few times I went through his subreddit, there were people that were dredging up stuff that he had said or that his team had said that I don't think that any of them are bad people for this. And I do think that they just made edgy jokes. But it's a little hard to hear those people that made similar, if not the same, edgy jokes now try to throw this guy up on the cross. Like really? I mean, especially Ethan Klein. If there was ever somebody that should understand why charitability is important to give to somebody, you'd think it's the guy that has like a delay on his show in a stream kill switch that they can hit, so that if he says something too far or takes a joke too far, they can cut that out and don't end up losing the entire production. That doesn't mean I think that Ethan Klein is some terrible, horrible person or some creep, or like everything that he says is bad. I think that he takes a joke too far. I think that he can get hyperbolic and go too far with a joke. But it's still a joke. And I think that not giving Vaush the same charitability is a little unfair. Not just a little. I think it is extremely unfair. Because I think at the end of the day, you have somebody that started a channel and has spent 4 to 5 years doing his best to actually change the mind of some of the most disturbed and sad people on the internet, and turn them towards a happier way, and not down the alt-right pipeline that they were already going down, and showing them that, you know, they can still have their edgy sense of humor, but not take it out on trans people and gay people and feminists and, you know, just women in general. And that, you know, giving them an alternative to the Sargons and the, you know, whatever else out there. And I think that's important. I think he did a good job. And I think that there's a diversity of tactic that needs to be taken to saving a lot of those people. And I think that he's as part of it. The same as I think that Ethan's is, and Hassan's, and other content creators that I followed before I knew who any of these people were. Like back in the day, just your ContraPoints and Philosophy Tube and Innuendo Studios and people, Sean, like all of these guys, like that. Many of these content creators still have a problem with Vaush. It doesn't mean that I hate any of them or hate him or any of that stuff. I'm able to understand where conflict can come from and be seen from different sides. But, you know, again, that comes from being able to look at it in good faith and charitability for people. So I do think that it is probably the end of Vaush's channel. I think he'll continue to stream for a little bit, but I think that the overall personality is kind of gone there. Not because he can't make pedo jokes or whatever else, because again, a lot of that stuff was 4 or 5 years ago. It's not something that he was continuing to do. I just think that optically he's kind of become the poster boy for a lot of degeneracy that a lot of rightfully normal people would be like, that's a kind of a bridge too far for me. And I think that's going to make debating hard. I think it's going to make it hard for him to really grow. He can probably still get subscribers, but I think that it's going to be a little difficult for him to get onto, like, let's say, the Majority Report at any time, or, you know, a larger streamer's platform like that. And I think that it's also going to cause some of his friends around the same size or a little bit larger than him, even, you know, your Kyle Kalinskis and Pac-Mans and things like that, to go, okay, maybe we're not going to make call-out videos, but I think we need to distance ourselves from this guy. It's hard to say. I don't know. I think that he, you know, he might continue to kind of garnish a almost cult support from people that will maybe drop little Easter eggs of support for him, but I think it's going to be hard to get some full-throated bestiality supporters out there. Which, duh. But I do think that you gotta come at these things and this criticism and these jokes with the charitability and with that good faith, so that it can be taken in that way. It can be seen as real. Like, I don't think anyone would watch me saying this or hear me saying any of these things and think that I'm being uncharitable to Vaush or being downright hateful or anything. And I also don't think that or at least I hope I'm not coming off as just some, you know, lost fan that will just make excuses for anything, because I don't feel like I'm making excuses for a lot of this. But it would be nice if his career could end not on some of the worst slander from 4chan that actual pedophiles have like put together to try to take him down being represented as true, and you know, just for the weird horse porn that he has. Like, that would be more fitting and funnier, probably. Yeah. Harder for him to argue against. Like, let's be real. And that's, you know, another thing that I kind of think Ethan's shooting himself in the foot here with. Like, he started off with a lot of the horse stuff, and that's funny and valid and fair. But when you start calling somebody like a pedo and making accusations of having like all of this CP and everything else like that, like, those are serious allegations. And now you end up in a situation where you have shows that are tied down trying to make that argument. Rather than making the funny jokes and the things like that, you took a joke too far, and now you doubled down on it. And it's going to do nothing but hurt your credibility with a lot of people in the long run. Everyone, no. Is it going to hurt your channel? No. Which is why I think that he doesn't feel a need to do any kind of self-reflecting or ask any of these questions or think about any of these things, because I think it's a lot easier to just kind of have a thought-terminating cliche type of approach of like, he's a smaller YouTuber. I have more fans. I'm not going to lose anyone to this. There's no downside for me doing the wrong thing, or at least a very small negative effect. So why not stop doing it? Or why would I stop doing it? Especially when there's potentially a larger positive effect out of it, at least for me personally. I guess time will kind of tell on that. But yeah, so I mean, this is obviously a much longer video for me and a weirder topic, and kind of not something that I normally do or even broach into the subject of. But you know, I wanted to try something a little bit different. I hope the audio is okay. Again, it's such a weird subject matter. I kind of wanted to not be screaming and yelling about this type of stuff, given that I have roommates. Also, I hope that this doesn't seem like drama farming. I'm hoping that as an account with like 15 followers, it would be understood that I'm recording this with the idea that no one really sees it. If somebody does, if you disagree with it, feel free to reach out, and I'll, you know, gladly talk about whatever disagreements you have with it or whatever else. But like, yeah, like I am a pretty big fan of Vaush. I have been listening to him for years. I think that a lot of the criticism that he's gotten recently is warranted, but I think overwhelmingly a lot more of it has been unfair, unjust, and just kind of downright sick. So, you know, I just kind of wanted to, I guess, express that. Past that, I guess I'll make another video tomorrow. Peace.